Hi everyone, my name is Susan K. Thomas. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. And today I'd like to share my skill of cross stitch. First of all, I'd like to thank the Emily Taylor Center for Women and Gender Equity for asking me to do this. I have been cross stitching on and off for 30 years, 32 years, and only have just recently in the past 3 years really gotten into it again. For various reasons, I just didn't have time, primarily being in college and then working in graduate school and having jobs, etc. And when I decided to go back to school, excuse me, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I thought, I'm going to need something that, for me, that is outside of school, and that's outside of work, and that's just about me, and that it's social. And, excuse me, and so I looked online and I actually found a local stitching group. And everybody else would knit, but I cross-stitched. And since that time, I have really expanded and have been doing a lot of different things with cross stitch. And I'm really enjoying it and having a great time doing it. So today I'd like to share this skill with you. And I'm going to be looking at it from a beginner's point of view. It can be incredibly overwhelming to even, get started. And so the project that I chose today is called Bumblebee Fancy. And I actually found this online for free. There are a lot of different websites where you can find free cross-stitch patterns. They might want you to sign up so that they can, add you to a mailing list, and then they will send you different promotions and promotional information, maybe want you to donate money or, but they give you a lot of free patterns. There are a lot of free patterns out there. But there are also other sites and places, there are places, local craft stores. I always really encourage people, look locally. I'm in Lawrence, Kansas, and we do have a Joann Fabric. They do have some patterns, very few. They have some kits primarily, but not very many. But they carry all the floss, they carry needles, and they carry some of the cloth. So that's great. There is also Michael's in town. And then downtown, of course, there are some local shops where you can go and they'll have different types of fabric and some patterns and some floss. So, and if, you're not finding anything locally, then there are tons of online options. Some online options that I prefer, 123stitch.com is a great place to start when you're just getting going to look for things, and they usually have a lot of sales. But also Etsy. Etsy is great because a lot of the patterns that they have you can buy either as a PDF for download immediately, or you can buy the actual physical pattern, which they'll then ship to you. So sometimes, I'm like, I want something quick and easy, and I don't want to have to wait. Oh, here's something I like, and it's a PDF. Let me download it. Another thing that I've done is follow people on social media, people who have Etsy shops, and they often give away freebies either through Etsy or on their websites. And so there are lots and lots of different options for finding patterns. And they vary in the type of, as far as in complexity. So the pattern I've chosen is for a beginner, but then there are all sorts of things, from beginning to when suddenly you're like, all right, I'm getting into this, I've done this, I'm at kind of the middle level to more advanced. And so I don't consider myself necessarily an advanced stitcher. I do some advanced stitching projects, but I also do things that are pretty basic, and easy too. I really love giving cross-stitch cross stitch things that I've done away to people, especially if I know that they'll really appreciate them. So often I will find things that are pretty quick and easy that I can do in a few hours, and then I'll gift it. So actually, I started thinking about this thinking, I don't even have any finished things that I can show you. I can show you some things that are in process, and I'll do that a bit later so that you can, just kind of get an idea of some of the things that are out there. Now, as far as choosing your fabric, okay, so, like I've said, lots of free patterns online, different places you can buy them. There are also a ton of different types of fabric, primarily Aida Cloth, and this is what I'll be using if I can give kind of a close enough shot of it. Aida is pretty standard for projects in cross stitch. This is actually a 14-point Aida, and what that means is that there are 14 stitches to an inch. And that's pretty big actually in cross stitch. A lot of people like to stitch smaller than that. And for some projects, depending what it is, I will do a 14 count. And that's what today's project that I'm starting and going to show you will be on. And then there are also, smaller. So like this comes in 11. An 11, which is much bigger, 14, 16, 18 point, 20 point, 22, and I'm not sure if it comes any smaller. It probably comes a little smaller than that too. I often pick 18. 18 tends to be pretty good for me in my eyesight. So I do have a magnifying glass that I use sometimes if it gets too small. But for this project, I won't need that because 14 is pretty big for me. So there's the cloth. And also Aida doesn't just come in white. I chose white for this project to show you, but it also comes in every color of the rainbow. And sometimes you can find it, once again, Etsy is a great place. You can find it dyed different colors. You can buy it. Oatmeal is one color that it's a light brown that I really like to do things on, samplers, etc. Kind of give it a little more aged look. And there are, I guess also with Aida, then besides Aida, there's also linen that people stitch on. I do have some linen here, and this is actually an 18 count linen. So this is like a cloth, more of a cloth, but this actually stitches bigger with 18 stitches bigger than what the 14 count is. Because the 14 count, we're just going to be going 1/1 stitch from hole to hole. And this, it would be kind of like a 9 count because they recommend using 2/2, but I would probably actually stitch 1/1 on this. And so it would be a true 18 for me. And then I also have, and these are some fabrics that I just recently got. I'm not sure how well they'll show up on the sample, but this is one that's a fabric, and you might be able to see that it's actually has been dyed, so you can see that it looks like there's kind of a texture to it. And this is actually a 25, so once again, if I were to, and this one I will do 2/2 because trying to do 1/1 on this would kill my eyes. I couldn't do it. But for something like this, I'll probably use it for a sampler or a small piece. So, but for this piece, yes, we are working on this. Now, for a lot of my pieces, if I'm just going to use them in a hoop or a Q-snap, which is it's different than a hoop, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But I don't have a hoop this small, and this won't fit in a Q-snap. So I'm just going to stitch this in hand. That's what it's called, in hand. So I'll just stitch holding it, and I'll just use my own fingers to hold it taut, even though it's a little stiff. So I mentioned, using a hoop, but then there is also using, this is what's called a Q-snap. And if I take it apart, I should have thought about this beforehand, but I didn't, and it's okay. This is actually like PVC pipe, and it has little clamps that go right on it. And I love these. I love these. They come in different size, like a 6x6, an 8x8, I think an 8x11. And I love these because they often keep my fabric tighter, or it's easier for me to keep them tighter. So, like the project, this is one that I'm working on. And as I mentioned, using oatmeal because it has a little more aged. This one is called Cinnamon Stars, and it's an autumn one. And so I, wanted to use a fabric that felt a little more autumny. And you'll see all these things they didn't have when I first started, and now they do. And I'm just a sucker. Right here I have my little needle minder. It's a little cat. And what that is, it's a magnet, and actually my needle stuck to the back. And then you just put your needle down, or you can always stick it through the fabric. But how many of us, if you do have stitched before or so, how many of us are constantly misplacing our needles? I know I am, so these are a lifesaver for me. I love them. So when I'm using my Q-snap, I will just take it, I'll center the part that I want to work on, and then I snap the PVC pipe on. And the PVC pipe actually has a little grip on the inside. I don't know if you can see that, but that's really helps because it kind of grabs onto that fabric a bit, and then pulls it tight. And so that's really great. Okay, so we have that. You probably know what a hoop is, an embroidery hoop is. And so it's all a matter of choice. I know people who do huge projects and just do it all in hand. I also use a frame, a scroll frame, and I'll show you one of those in a bit. But primarily to start off with, you can either do, especially when working small, you can stitch in hand, you can buy a hoop, or you can buy Q-snaps. The next thing to think about is your needle size. Now, I'm going to actually grab this needle, which I was using on that project. You'll want to use tapestry needles, usually 24, 20, 25, 26, up to 28. Now, the difference in sizing is 28 is smaller as far as the thickness is smaller. It doesn't have a as big of eye, and the 24 is larger, so it's kind of backwards. So the 24, has bigger eye. And the reason you want to consider what size needle you're using is because as you're pulling your thread through, it can actually stretch the little hole you're going through, because it has tons of little holes all over it, and that's what you're going to be stitching through. So if you have an appropriate size needle, you won't stretch out your fabric at all, which is what you want. And then, so like when I work on a smaller, like a size 18, I use a size 28 needle, which has a smaller eye. And then I just use a needle threader or pray to God that it goes through on the first shot. Okay, so I have that. I have my needles, right? I've talked about Q-snaps and hoops and stitching in hand, right? But what are you going to use, right? Okay, well, there's floss. Man, I don't think I have any actual what they look like. So I think I'm going to pause and go grab one. Okay, so I'm back. And this is what your floss looks like. This is your basic DMC floss. You may have seen it at Michael's or Joann Fabric. I have a bunch of different color skeins here. This is how it comes in the store. And this is your basic cotton floss. And once again, there are all sorts of different kinds of floss that you can purchase online. But the standard tends to be DMC that people start with. And then once you get going, and if you decide that this is something you want to stick with, there are different flosses you might want to try. There are a lot of people who dye their own floss and then sell it on Etsy, and so you can find all sorts of really cool, variegated flosses that change color, that have different colors in it. And a lot of people really like stitching with silk floss on the linen. But for me, I just generally always get the DMC. I want this, to be, this is fun. It's economical. I'm trying to make it economical. I might try silk at some point because I've heard it's wonderful to stitch with. But for right now, I'm just, staying with what I know and using the DMC. I do have one project that I'm not going to show tonight that I'm using a special thread. And I'm not showing it because, just because it's kind of a mess. There's a bunch that I want to rip out and change. So anyway, I have these, but what I've actually done with them is I put them on bobbins. And it just makes it easier to store, and they're in their correct order. And I have multiple boxes of these, and it's just a really easy way for me to store them and to access them. And as long as I remember to snap the lid shut, because let me tell you, I've had a cat dump these over more than once, and they're all over the place. But it's really great. It's an easy way to stay organized. And one of the things I do, this is actually, I call this my project box, in that I have several projects. All the floss I've pulled out of the other floss, I've pulled it out of my collection, and I've just stored it in here. So cinnamon stars, I just have all the floss sitting in here for one of those projects. And then I have a couple of other projects that I've done here. And I've also done that for this project that I'm going to show you. So that's floss. Now, as far as expense, floss is usually, when it's not on sale, it's usually about 60 cents a skein. Often there are times, depending on the time of year, you can find it for 45 cents. And so it's always great to keep an eye on places to find a discount, and then, buy the floss you need, or you're getting short of. And online stores like 1-2-3 Stitch will have sales too, and so that's really great. One of the things that I found out during the pandemic is early on, everybody was buying crafts because we were all quarantined, right? So everybody's buying floss and fabric and whatnot, and so stores were out. And so one of the I was working on a project at for somebody last summer. No, it was last spring. It was before Mother's Day, and I ran out of black, and I couldn't find black anywhere. And so I have a sister who also stitches, and she actually had to send it to me. So, but now stores are stocked. So I did find a hoop. I found a smaller hoop when I got up to go and get the floss. So this hoop will actually fit for this project. Okay, so I'm going to take out this hoop, take out the inner side, inner part, stretch out my thing. Oh, let me do this. I'm sorry. Starting. So when you start a project, depending on what you're doing, some people are either like, oh, I start in the corner, up in the corner, or I start in the middle. Most people say start in the middle. Now, when you're figuring out how much fabric you need, you want to make sure that you are accounting, what are you going to do with this? Are you going to frame this, or, the pattern that I have it's for a little pin cushion. And so it tells you right on here to that the Aida Cloth should be 7 by 7 inches, and so that's what I got this for. But most don't really tell you, or they'll tell you for one cloth what the area stitched is going to be. And so what I tend to do is, depending on what it's going to be, I add 2 inches on each side. So this is actually a really small piece. The 14 count, it's 2.5 by 2.5 inches. So it's pretty small. And so I added 2 inches on each side, so that to make it a little bigger, and that way it's easier to work on. And then if I do want to make it into a pin cushion, or if I want to get a little frame, there's plenty of room to do that. Now, the way to figure it out when they don't tell you how to do this, they will tell you how many stitches in each direction, width and height. And so depending on what your fabric is going to be, what your fabric size is, you can either you basically divide it by the number of stitches in an inch that you're using. So with 14 Aida, if something says that the width is 139 inches, I'm going to divide that 139 by 14, and that will tell me how like that length is. And then I'll do the same thing for the width, and that will tell me, and then I'll just add a couple inches on each side. There are also different calculators, like 123 Stitch has a fabric calculator that you can use. Okay, so with this, I'm going to start in the middle. And so what I'm going to do actually to make this easy is I'm folding it one way, and then I'm going to fold it the other way. And now I have a point in the middle, if you can see, where the fabric folds, and that's going to be my starting point. So let me take this, and I got to get the hoop on, and that's sometimes a challenge with the fabric that's a little stiffer. There we go. Okay, so that's done. There we go. And on mine, I can see about right there is where my center point is. Find my needle. My light isn't great in here, and so I can find my center point. And as you can see, it's not in the middle of my hoop because I didn't put the fabric in, equally. Okay. So I decided that the part that I actually want to start on with this, if we're doing this, hold this up, I want to start on the bee's head. So I'm going to start on the bee's head, and so on here there's going to be a cross, there's a key, and I'm trying to get the camera right. There's a key, and it's going to tell you all of the colors you need, and this actually gives me Anchor or DMC. Anchor is similar to DMC. It's packaged the same, it looks the same. DMC tends to be just better quality, and so I use that. And so it gives the Anchor number as well as the DMC, and then it gives a symbol. Oh, let's see my camera. It provides a symbol, and for the number, the one I want for the little bee's head, it's actually a gray heart, and the number is a dark pewter gray. And so I'm going to take and I have my thread. Now, this pattern states that you should do 2 threads. When I'm working in a 14, I actually like to use 3 because I think the coverage is better. And so that's what I'm going to do. DMC and Anchor threads are actually 6 threads together. And so if I put my hand up there, I have divided this into 2 sets of 3, and then I'm just going to divide it. And this, putting all my love in this and my, my DNA and my stitching. And I just divided it. Okay. So now I have a 3x3. Once again, a little more DNA in my stitching. And I am going to thread my needle, I hope. First time through. Good. So I have my needle. Now, you don't knot the end. Do not knot the end. The reason we don't knot is, and that sounds like so grammatically weird, the reason that we don't do knots is because they can push through the fabric once you've framed it. And we don't want that. So, okay, so now with this, I can see that my starting point is actually the tip of the bee's nose. Well, there are 3 rows above that, and I actually want to then, so I want to start up where that is. So I'm actually going to count, and this is why we call it counted cross stitch, because there's counting involved. And so I'm going to go to the center, and I'm going to count up, thinking about where I'm starting. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't even know if people can see this. And out it comes, and here it comes. Now, the thing about this is, I said, oh, we don't want to knot it, right? You're like, well, how are we going to keep it from coming through? I'm going to go across to the diagonal of that stitch. Let me pull it through part of the way so I can show the part of the stitch. And this is what it looks like on the back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it so that there's just about an inch or so of the tail, and I'm actually going to hold that with my finger. And then I'm going to come up to the right of that first stitch, and I'm going to pull it up, and that's going to, and then I'm going to go in diagonally again. Let me do a couple stitches so you can see what I mean. And as I do this, by holding my thread in place, I'm going to anchor it down underneath these stitches. And I want to look at my pattern. I have to have 3 stitches where I am. So this is what that looks like. 3 stitches. And if we flip it over, it's pinned under. Okay. Now I'm going to come down to the bottom here and come through, and I'm going to go back the other direction so that it's a little X, it's a little cross. Oops, you gotta be careful not to knot. And there we go. You can see it there. And then if I flip it over, you can see that. And then what I'll do is I'll just trim that extra tail off to make it neat. Do that with my scissors. My little handy scissors, which is great. And there we go. That is my first row. Sorry, guys. First row for my little bee's head. And then I will just come down into the next and pull through and go across for another, oh, what is this? 5. Now, there are, this is really relaxing. I find this to be incredibly relaxing. What always astounds me as I'm working on these is how long it actually takes to do it. Because you think, oh, this is just, it doesn't take very long. We're just doing a couple stitches here and there. And then I'll watch a movie, maybe 2, and I'll have maybe after, 4 to 5 hours. This is also another thing you want to do. You want to twirl your needle like that because it will twist as you're going through. And this will help you from getting your thread knotted up. But I will watch a movie, and then after a couple hours, 3 hours, I'm like, wow, I didn't stitch very much. I stitched the whole time, but it's like half an inch. Maybe I'm watching too much closely. So there, I have done, getting it in the camera. There we go. Another head. So then once I, get this done, when it comes, when I finish that little bee head, then I'm like, well, okay, I've got to end it. How am I going to end if I don't knot? Well, I'll show you here. Basically, you're just going to put your needle under the last row. And I'll do it on this, even though I'm not done with it. And so what I don't have is I have my needle right now underneath my bottom row stitches. And I'm going to pull it through. Hopefully. I tend to stitch a little tight, which is great, but sometimes I stitch too tight. There we go. And so there I have pinned that down, and I can snip it off. Okay, so basically what I'll do then is I'll keep following the pattern until I get all of the X's in there, right? And this, for me, this is probably, a couple hours of work, maybe probably 4, maybe a movie or 2, because there are actually a lot of stitches. It doesn't look like it, but there are. But it's, just fun to do. You'll see that there are also lines here, or lines around the thing. That's, because there's going to be an outline. And so what I would do with that, and this will usually tell you, it tells you what color it is, and this is telling me that it's $37.99, which is a very dark pewter. Pull it out, and here it is. It is a dark pewter. So this, they're saying it is actually a one strand, and that's usually standard for backstitching, is 1 strand. So I'm just going to pull out 1 strand. If I can get a hold of 1 strand, just pull that out. And then just wind the rest back on the bobbin. Oh, there we go. That goes back on this bobbin. I'm already missing my needle because I don't have a needle minder on this project. Okay, and so I've pulled off this thread, and so I'm going to thread my needle. This probably isn't going to be the best video, it's hard to see and hard to show things, but there are so many, because of my camera angle, there are so many great YouTube videos that stitchers have stitchers show different stitches and techniques that they use, and I find those so helpful. And there's something called Floss Tube, and that's within YouTube, and it's just different stitchers will have recorded Floss Tube videos where they discuss their stitching and the different styles that they've used and the different things that they're working on and different projects, and show what they've accomplished. And they can be really interesting, and I really can learn a lot from those. So I do suggest that. Now, so with backstitching, and I do suggest you look online, for these. Maybe I'm backstitching since I don't have, an easy way to show the camera how to do this. But, it's basically just outlining the work I've done. Once again, have to hold that little snippy in place. And what this does is it really can help your work pop. And so it's really nice to add details. And so if you can see, maybe you can, especially around the pewter. It just basically makes it more finished. It would really definitely show out much, you know, the black outlining that is on this. It really make this flower pop out. So those are the basics of cross stitch. Now there are, you know, there aren't even really a lot of stitches. It's usually just actually the one stitch. Of course, I pulled this needle out and I haven't finished ended it, so please be patient. There we go. And once again, I'm just pinning it under. Trimming. Some people pride themselves on having really clean backs, and so you'll be on Instagram and they'll show their front and then they'll show their back, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't care as much. If I have a clean back, that's great. Yes, depending on the piece, I'm like, yeah, there's no way this can have a clean back because I'm using too many colors. So the other stitch that you might, I wish I'd shown you this when I had this threaded, is the, excuse me, is a half stitch. And what a half stitch is, let me stitch this in. Actually pin this down. It's the other thing you do is you sometimes pull through on your first time if you don't have a good grasp on your tail. So I'm going to do a couple stitches. So a half stitch is exactly what it sounds. It's just half a stitch. So, and this isn't in the pattern. This I'm just showing you. Okay. So I'm going to make this one a half stitch. And I have, you know, cross stitched it there. And I'm going to come up through the regular hole that I normally would down here. But I'm only going to go halfway up in, and so basically going through the center and of the fabric. And just doing half of it. And a lot of times you'll come across that stitch when you're going around a curve or a slant. This one does not have any half stitches. But so if they want something to look curved or slant, they'll be a half stitch. And, you know, like a quarter stitch, I don't know if I've ever had a quarter stitch, but it would be basically, once again, it would just be coming up in that same hole and going into the middle instead of halfway, and then doing the same thing on the other corner. And this is what happens when you can't see anymore. You have to look over your glasses. And so there, once again, there, that's a quarter stitch. So it depends on the designer whether or not you would ever come across these. So those are the basics of cross stitch. I showed you, you know, this one that I was working on. It's the Cinnamon Stars. And this is one I really like. And I'm just realizing, I'm like, okay, I should probably tell them a little bit about, you know, when they're following their pattern. Because it reminds me of this, you know. When you're following your pattern, it's up to you how you're going to mark it. Now, there are a number of cross-stitch programs or apps that you can download to the Fire tablet or to the iPad, and you can keep track that way. I always print mine, or I, if it's a print, a actual um, physical pattern, I will photocopy it, because, such as this one. This is one that I just bought in December, Winter Rose Manor, which is really popular right now among people on Instagram. A lot of people are doing it, and I just thought it was so pretty. But I'm like, I don't want to mark on this, but I tend to get lost, and I want to make sure I'm staying in the right place. So what I'll do is I'll photocopy it, and then I can take a pencil. So, for example, here's the pattern of one that I'm working on right now, and as I go, I'll actually mark off different squares. If I finished it, I like, especially if I'm getting into more of maybe some of this detail work. I mark it off, because then I'm like, okay, it's done. I know it is where it is, and I won't repeat it. So I have mentioned that different projects, different sizes of things that as far as projects, different abilities as far as complicated, small. So this is an example of one. There are also really small ones, like the one I'm showing you, showed you tonight. These are other ones that I hope to start one of these soon. Very small one. And this one, I saw somebody on Instagram doing it, and I just thought it was so cute. And I thought, oh, because I really love samplers right now. And seriously, there are so many things you can do as far as patterns. So, I like samplers a lot right now, and that's pretty much everything I'm working on right now is a sampler. And except for I have one that I'm doing for a friend that is actually a Doctor Who TARDIS, and it's really cool. But small ones like this, like this, I think this pattern was $5, and I bought it, I think, on 1-2-3 Stitch or Etsy, and then it also, this is cute. These actually also come with little buttons that go inside the purple flowers here. And so I thought that was really cute. And so this is something that's going to be quick and easy for me to do. Or they show, and I bought all seasons, so they also show, how you could do it on one. So that's an example, not too expensive, pretty inexpensive. You can also buy, instead of patterns where you have to buy the floss yourself, you can buy kits. Here's one that I bought that I'd like to do. It's an eggplant. And there's actually 3 to this set, and I'm still looking for the third one because they're rare. And there's an eggplant, a carrot, and a green pepper, and I thought these were just so cute. I thought those would be great in the kitchen. So at some point I'll start these. This is the other thing with this is I used to be somebody who was a monogamous stitcher, and a monogamous stitcher is somebody who only has one project going on at a time. And now I am not. Now I have 5 to 7 going at one time, and I schedule when I'm going to work on them. Like, okay, I'm pulling this project out and I'll work on this all week. This is a smaller project that's going faster, so I'll work on it for 3 days. And I just kind of have this mental schedule going on in my head. And people say, how do you determine what you're going to work on when? It's like, well, I have it mentally. Here's another one that I thought was really cute, sunflowers, Kansas. And as you can see, and the same with this other one, it has the fabric in it, and all of the floss. I think this one was $7 or $8 on Etsy, and this one I think was like on sale. I think like $13 on I don't remember which one, but it was on some site. And I have a lot of flowers that I like. I have a lot of samplers. This is another one, where I saw some, because I love pansies, and I saw somebody on Instagram who had done this, and I just loved it. This is, the curse of Instagram, because I see all these things I want to do. I had mentioned earlier that besides using Q-snaps, I also use a scroll frame, and so this is a big project that I'm working on right now. This is actually, see it. It's so hard with this camera to see where I am. There we are. So this is quite a big project, and it's a stitch along from 2021 that was put out by Modern Folk Embroidery. So now it's on a frame. So this is a scroll frame, and it's for a bigger project. The reason I started using a scroll frame is because when I was working with Q-snaps, I got tired of holding all the extra fabric. And I just trying to bunch it up and trying to get to the actual surface. And so I decided and this has one of the pandemic things, because I was stitching a lot more during the pandemic, I have been. And so I decided to take the scroll bar jump. And so then I have a stand that this attaches to, and I stitch. And I actually then taught myself to become a two-handed stitcher. So I keep one hand underneath and one hand over while this is being held. And it makes stitching faster. But, I stitched for all these years, and I never, ever had considered buying one until I just got really tired of working on a big project and tucking under the fabric, trying to roll it up so I could actually work on the project. So there are a lot of resources online. There are different YouTube, different groups on Facebook, as well as Instagram, different accounts you can follow to learn more. YouTube, like I said, there are a lot of great videos on cross-stitching, and they can really help with technique. It does not have to be an expensive hobby. Because you can buy fabric, for $6-7, and yeah, it adds up when you're first getting started, $6-7 for the fabric, and then the pattern, might be $2 to $5 depending what you're doing, or more. They can be really expensive too. And then your floss you can find relatively, you can find sales. So it's possible to do this economically. Lord knows I did when I was a student. So there are also a lot of people who sell things on Facebook Marketplace, as well as I always see people finding great stashes at like antique malls or Goodwill, etc. I have not had that luck yet, but maybe if I went and actually looked. But quarantine, I'm staying in. So get out there and look, if you're interested in, doing this hobby. If you have questions, please contact me. My email is skthomas@ku.edu. I'm more than happy to answer questions, help you get started, or, maybe direct you towards resources if you're not finding anything that you want to, anything on Google. There are, and there are all sorts of just great patterns, people who are doing cool stuff, not just the pretty flowery stuff, but then also really subversive cross stitches and lots of fun things, lots of books, lots of and just fun patterns. It's cool to get on Instagram and see what people are doing. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this is coherent and that you enjoyed it. So thank you so much. Once again, thank you very much to the Emily Taylor Center for Women and Gender Equity. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a great night.